In this lesson, we're going to talk about place value and rounding. Specifically, we'll understand place value. Given a place value, we'll determine the digit in that place value. We'll write a decimal number given specified place values and apply place value to rounding. Place value. So I have a large number written up here. It can continue on in either direction. But one thing that's important, a few things actually important to note, is the decimal always goes after the ones place in between the tenths place. Okay, so starting from the decimal and working our way to the left or upwards, we have ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s, millions, 10 millions. Guess what the next one is? 100 millions, and so on. Going to the right of the decimal, we have the tenths, and I've underlined the THS. It shows it's to the right of the decimal, so it's not yet a whole number. Hundredths, thousands, 10,000s, next is 100,000s, etc. So make sure you make a note of this in your notes or take a picture of it. Example number 1, list the digit that has the given place value for the number below. So we have 218.953. So the digit in the ones place. The ones place is always to the left of the decimal, so this would be 8. The digits in the hundredths place, I always count. So we have tens, tenths, hundredths, so this would be 5. The digit in the tens place, ones, tens, is a 1. The digit in the tenths place, 9. The digit in the hundredths place, ooh, that probably should have been hundreds. Let's pretend that's hundreds. We have ones, tens, hundreds. And then the digit in the thousandths place, tenths, hundredths, thousandths, is 3. Example 2, write the decimal number that has the specified place values. So we have 2 ones, 4 hundredths, 1 10, 7 hundreds, and 3 tenths. What I would recommend is write out blank spaces for how many place values that were given. So in this case, we're given 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I would write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blanks. And then my strategy would either to start with the highest place value or the lowest and work my way from there. So I'm going to start with the highest. Out of the ones, hundredths, tens, hundreds, and tenths, hundreds is the biggest. So it would go to the leftmost end. Next, we would have the tens. And the next lowest would be the ones. Remember, our decimal is always to the right of the ones place, so you would have to put your decimal in this spot. Next, after the decimal, we have the tenths place. And then lastly, our smallest is hundredths. So this number is 712.34. For our next example, you could try to do this on your own or just follow along. We have 100th, 5 tenths, 0 thousandths, and 7 10,000ths. So we have 4 spaces. I'm going to start with my biggest, and out of the biggest of these is the tenths place. So since we're starting with the tenths, our decimal always goes to the left of the tenths place, so you have to put the decimal there. After tenths, we have hundredths. We have 1 of those. After hundredths is thousandths. We have 0 of those. And then after thousandths is 10,000ths. So this number is 0.5107. You don't have to write the 0 in front. I just do, that's the way I was trained, but you could write it as 0.5107 as well. Okay. Rounding. One thing that you'll be asked to do a lot of in this course is to round. So we want to talk about it here and then we'll use it throughout the course. So there's a couple different ways to remember rounding. First, you locate the number in the place value you are asked to round to. So for instance, you'll be told to round to the nearest 10 or the nearest 100 or the nearest tenth. Then what you do is you look at the number to the right. The number to the right determines how you're going to round the place value that you were asked to. If the number to the right is 0 to 4, you leave it the same. If the number to the right is 5 through 9, it goes up 1. Okay, another way of saying a nice little poem, find the number, underline, circle it, look next door. 4 or less, just ignore. 5 or more, you add 1 more. Example, round 31.2 to the nearest whole number. Okay, so one thing I like to do is whenever I can, I try to bring visuals in. So if we're rounding it to the nearest whole number, our options are 31 or 32. So the number can go lower or it can go up to the next. So if we're looking at this, let's say we have 31 and 32. This is 31.5. So our number that we're rounding is 31.2. Is this closer to 31 or 32? It's closer to 31. Okay. And following our rounding rules or our rounding poem, we're asked to round to the nearest whole number. 31, we look next door. It's 0 to 4, so we just leave it the same. So our final answer is 31. Whatever place value you're asked to round to is where your number stops. Part B, round 427.2 to the nearest 10. So our tens place is where the 2 is. So when we're thinking in terms of 10, we could do 420 or 430. This would be 425. Okay. And these are just visuals. You don't have to use the number line if it's confusing to you. Don't worry about it. I'm just trying to show multiple different ways to approach this problem. Okay. So 427.2, probably somewhere over here. Okay, so this number is closer to 430 because we're talking about rounding to the tens place. Okay, next, if you're going to use the poem or the rounding rules, we're asked to round to the nearest 10, and we look next door. Okay, so next door or to the right is 7. Since this number is 5 through 9, we add 1 to the place value that we're asked to round to. So that means the number in the tens place would go up 1 to get 430. Part C, round 12,402.89 to the nearest thousand. So the thousands place is where the 2 is. So when we're looking at rounding it to the nearest thousand, is it going to be closer to 12,000 or 13,000? We look next door. This number is 0 through 4, which means that the 2 stays the same. And as I mentioned, that's in a way where the number stops, or that's the last digit that we have that's non-zero, and then the rest become zeros since we're rounding to the nearest thousand. Lastly, round 0.557 to the nearest tenths place. To the nearest tenth. So we identify the tenths place, which is where the 5 is. We look next door. It's 5 through 9, so that's going to go up 1. So this is 0.6. And if you want, you could fill the rest in with zeros. But our last non-digit 0 is the place value that we were asked to round to. Thank you for watching. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to me at any time.